The billionaire's challenge had sounded like arrogance wrapped in a smile. "Solve this, and I'll give you everything." He said it on live television, in front of millions, with that smug tone only money can buy. Across the country, most laughed. A poor black woman solving the unsolvable? Impossible, they said. But what began as a joke soon turned into the most watched social experiment in modern history. Because she didn't walk away, she accepted. Days later, the cameras would show her standing alone at the billionaire's glass tower, holding a weathered notebook, her clothes plain, but her eyes fierce. What no one knew then was that this challenge would not only expose the man's cruelty, it would shatter an entire system built to keep people like her from ever winning. She lived in the forgotten part of the city, where broken streetlights flickered like dying promises, and buses stopped running long before midnight. Her name was Ava Coleman, a quiet genius most people never noticed. By day, she worked at Eza, a diner, serving coffee to men who wouldn't meet her eyes. By night, she scribbled equations, sketches, and theories into a notebook older than her dreams. Ava never chased recognition. Survival was enough. Her mother's hospital bills had drained everything, and the city didn't have room for people who dreamed without money. She'd once applied for dozens of research grants, each one denied. Underqualified, not a fit. Try again next year. But when the billionaire's challenge appeared, a televised open contest to solve his company's unsolvable environmental algorithm, she saw something others didn't. It wasn't the prize that caught her attention. It was the insult. The billionaire, Lawrence Voss, had laughed as he announced it. "Anyone can try," he'd said, "even those without degrees, though I doubt they'll understand the question." The crowd chuckled, and the message was clear. It wasn't an opportunity. It was entertainment. Still, Ava watched the broadcast from her tiny apartment, the flickering screen reflecting in her tired eyes. She wasn't angry, and not yet. She was calculating. Behind that soft silence lived a sharp mind that had spent years solving problems no one cared about, because they came from the wrong neighborhood, the wrong color, the wrong class. The next morning, she mailed her entry, a short note and a thick file of handwritten equations that no one had ever seen before. It wasn't pride that drove her. It was something deeper. She wanted to prove just once that brilliance didn't belong to privilege. Weeks passed. No response. Then a single envelope arrived, embossed with the Voss Corporation seal. Inside was an invitation. "You've been selected for the final round. Report to Voss Tower, 9 a.m. Ava folded the letter with trembling hands. Outside her window, the city roared with indifference, but somewhere deep inside, she felt the quiet hum of change beginning to move. The glass doors of Voss Tower whispered open like the mouth of another world. Everything inside gleamed: polished marble, silver railings, and faces that didn't know struggle. Ava stepped in wearing a plain gray coat and scuffed shoes. The Affe. Receptionist's smile froze halfway when she read the name on the invitation. "Finalist?" the woman asked, disbelief sharpening her tone. Ava nodded quietly. The guard's gaze drifted from her shoes to her skin. Slow, measuring, skeptical. No one needed to say the word, but she could feel it echoing beneath their politeness. She doesn't belong here. On the top floor, Lawrence Voss stood waiting. Tall, crisp suit, perfect hair, the kind of man who believed money was proof of intelligence. Cameras hovered in the background. The contest was now a televised spectacle. "Miss Coleman," he said smoothly, "I must say, I didn't expect you to make it this far." She only smiled faintly, clutching her weathered notebook. "I didn't either." The challenge was simple on paper: to stabilize an AI-driven climate model that even Voss's top scientists couldn't fix. But as she sat down before the massive holographic screen, she saw it immediately. The algorithm wasn't broken. It was biased. It prioritized wealthy regions, minimizing data from low-income areas, like the one she lived in. The system was designed to save the planet selectively. She felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't a scientific error. It was moral corruption disguised as logic. Hours turned into days. The building staff whispered about her. Some mocked, others pitied. Online, social media divided, half cheering her courage, half ridiculing her background. Hashtags spread, Diner Girl vs. Billionaire, Impossible Equation, Voss Challenge. Reporters camped outside the tower. Each morning, Ava walked past their flashing cameras, head high, coat buttoned, notebook in hand. She barely slept, eating from vending machines, rewriting formulas on paper towels when inspiration struck. And Voss watched, amused. "You can quit any time," he said once, smiling behind his espresso. "No shame in knowing your limits." But Ava never answered. She just kept working. Then came the breakthrough. A single, subtle modification. A human correction to a machine's arrogance. She rerouted the algorithm's priority weight, forcing it to account for all regions equally. When she ran the simulation, the results were perfect, cleaner, fairer, efficient. Her hands trembled as the data stabilized on screen. She'd done it, she'd solved it. But when she presented her results, silence filled the boardroom. The executives exchanged glances. Voss leaned back, tapping a pen against the table. "Impressive," he said finally, "but unnecessary." She frowned. "It works." "Yes," he said, "but it changes things. Our investors won't like it." It hit her like a slap. The challenge had never been about innovation. It was about control. He'd never expected her to win. And now that she had, he couldn't afford for her to be right. Outside, the world was waiting for a story of triumph. Inside, the truth was being buried under polished smiles and contracts. Ava stood there, realizing that brilliance alone couldn't win in a system rigged to silence the wrong people. That night, she didn't go home. She stayed in the tower's dim research room, staring at the screen that held her life's proof. Somewhere outside, the city slept, but inside her, something burned stronger than humiliation. She opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "If they won't publish the truth, I will." And with that decision, the next storm began. Not in the skies above, but in the digital world below. By morning, the story had escaped the tower. Ava's quiet rebellion had turned into a digital wildfire. Anonymous uploads appeared across social media, screenshots of code, graphs, and memos proving what she had discovered. The Voss algorithm had been designed to ignore poor, mostly black neighborhoods in every major city. The model they called Earth Equalizer was a lie. It only served those already safe from the storm. At first, no one believed it. Then came the video, grainy footage from inside the lab showing Ava confronting Voss. "You said anyone could try," her voice echoed, low and steady. "You didn't say the truth wasn't welcome." The clip went viral within hours. News anchors replayed it. Activists quoted her words, and hashtags shifted from mockery to outrage. Diner Girl vs. Billionaire became "Shed Expose Voss." The billionaire, who once looked untouchable, now stood under a spotlight hotter than any boardroom light he'd ever known. Voss tried to control the narrative. He called it misunderstood data. His PR team painted Ava as an emotional novice misinterpreting complex systems, but the public wasn't buying it, not this time. Because for once, the evidence didn't come from powerful institutions. It came from her hands. When the press demanded answers, Voss arranged an emergency broadcast, a live statement meant to restore his image. He didn't expect her to show up, but Ava walked onto that stage uninvited, in the same plain coat she'd worn on her first day at the tower. The room froze. Cameras turned. Voss tried to smile. "Miss Coleman, But she raised a hand, calm and firm. "You said if I solved it, you'd give me everything," she said quietly, eyes locking onto his. "All I wanted was truth." Behind her, a screen flickered to life, her algorithm running live, transparent, unfiltered. It showed exactly what his version had hidden, data that gave equal value to every human life, not just profitable ones. The crowd gasped. Voss's mask cracked. The billionaire's empire began to collapse in real time, investors pulling out, stock prices plummeting, sponsors fleeing. Cameras zoomed in on his face, on hers, on the stark difference between power and purpose. Ava didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply turned toward the microphones and said, "You built walls with numbers. I just showed the world they were never invisible." In that moment, silence became louder than applause, and for the first time, the world wasn't looking at her color. It was looking at her courage. In the weeks that followed, the empire of Lawrence Voss crumbled faster than anyone imagined. Board members resigned, lawsuits piled up, and governments began investigations into every project his company had ever touched. But while the headlines devoured the scandal, Ava Coleman disappeared quietly from the noise. She had no interest in fame, only change. Back in her small apartment, she returned to the same wooden desk where it had all begun. The same flickering lamp, the same silence. Only this time, the world outside was different. Letters flooded. In students, single mothers, even young coders who saw themselves in her. They didn't write to congratulate her. They wrote to thank her for proving that truth still mattered, even when power said it didn't. A university reached out, offering her a research position. A global climate foundation wanted to fund her work. For the first time, doors opened without her needing to beg, yet she turned most of them down. "Change," she told one interviewer, "isn't about getting a seat at their table. It's about building a new one." Meanwhile, Voss reappeared only once, a pale figure in a courtroom, stripped of the arrogance that once defined him. The same cameras that once adored him now captured his silence, and as his company fell apart, the world started rewriting what innovation meant, not who owned the idea, but who it served. Months later, Ava stood before a classroom full of young girls in the neighborhood she'd grown up in. She wasn't there as a hero, but as a reminder. She wrote a single sentence on the board. "Brilliance has no color." The room went quiet. Some of the girls smiled. Some just stared at her, realizing that someone who looked like them had challenged the world and won. When she left that day, the sky above the city glowed faintly orange, sunlight bouncing off the same glass towers that had once turned their backs on her. But now they reflected something new, possibility. In her notebook on the last page, Ava wrote one final line. "When they say you don't belong, remember. They built their walls to protect fear, not truth." And as her story spread, from classrooms to newsrooms to dinner tables, people didn't just remember her name. They remembered the question her life left behind. How many truths have we buried just because the voice speaking them didn't sound rich enough?